Have you ever visited a place that made you feel like it had some kind of hidden story? For some, St David's Park is that place. I've heard a number of people say that visiting St David's Park just made them feel a little bit uncomfortable. What many people might not know is this place was in fact Hobart's first cemetery. So what exactly happened to the monuments and people that were buried here? I'm Karell. I'm an anthropologist, and for me cemeteries are one of the most interesting places in a city. I wrote a master's thesis analysing a colonial cemetery, and I just had to explore the story behind how this park that used to be the first cemetery of Hobart came to be such a prominent and frequently visited park. This area began being used as a burial ground in 1804, not long after the British established a permanent colony in the area. At the time, it was still called Van Diemen's Land, and it was predominantly a penal colony. Around about 73,000 convicts were transported here from the United Kingdom. The convict history here is written in stone. Sightings of the now extinct Tasmanian tigers do occur, but they're quite hard to prove. However, the two 140-year-old lions of Hobart can be seen right here in this park. Guarding the entrance to the park are these two beautiful stone lions. They were carved by a convict by the name of Richard Patterson, who was transported here from the UK in 1844 to serve a 10-year period for burglary. After being granted his freedom, he went on to become a respected stonemason, carving these lions without any model for inspiration in 1884. The lions originally sat at the bank of Van Diemen's Land until it was demolished in 1958. They were saved and gifted to the Hobart City Council in 1988 and now guard the Salamanca and Davey Street entrance. But what happened to the graves, you ask? The cemetery had originally been placed outside of the city limits, but as often happened, the settlement expanded and it eventually was engulfed. The cemetery itself was closed in 1872 and was converted into a park in 1926. As a result, most of the grave monuments were removed. Many headstones were just stored on the park's perimeter. At the time, it was pretty common for headstones to be made of sandstone, and as a result, many became unreadable or even completely disappeared. But they're not all gone. A number were salvaged in the 1970s and are still viewable in a series of memorial walls which are located next to the Supreme Court complex. They are some of the earliest colonial funerary artifacts in Australia. The proximity of the court almost seems like some not so subtle threat, some kind of reminder of the past. But maybe that's just my dark sense of humour. Throughout the park, there are several monuments that hint to its past. Even some of the towering trees are typical of what you'd expect to find in a colonial cemetery of this period. The evergreen cypress and yew trees are often used as a symbol for eternal life or even resurrection. But what about the people that were interned here? They wouldn't have just got up and walked away. The story of the existing monument of Tasmania's first governor, David Collins, gives a little insight to that. When the cemetery was first converted into a park, Collins' tomb was accidentally disturbed. It was inspected, resealed, and then subsequently forgotten. It's speculated that the tomb may be under the existing monument, or perhaps just off to the corner, or maybe 20 metres over this way. Historian Scott Seymour and a team of researchers have scanned this area to try to locate his tomb. Using various sources and ground-penetrating radar, what they found is that there are still graves, and therefore remains, scattered everywhere. Literally hundreds. Right here, or possibly here, or maybe over there, or perhaps in the middle of here. They could be anywhere. It's not that surprising that people feel a little creeped out here sometimes. But rather than superstition, I'd put it down to the subtle, and at times, not so subtle, reminders that this used to be a cemetery. Personally, I don't feel that creeped out by places like this. But then I've spent literally hours upon hours in cemeteries. I feel like there's just so much to learn from historic places like this. And if you want to learn more about that, check out the link in the description, which will take you to my master's thesis, which is completely free. If you've enjoyed this video, leave a comment saying where you're watching from, and make sure you check out this one if you want to keep exploring and learning.